Hello and welcome to, well, I can't believe we're here already, episode 5 of More Than the Score. Tony Moclair, joined every week here on Isolation TV by the great man, Troy Zantuck. How you going, Troy?
Great, Tone. And just quietly, mate, I'm getting a bit of a Virgin Mary feel about you at the moment with that light just coming down from me. Yeah, cross yourself. That's right. Episode 6, mate. How quickly we forget.
What,
Episode
are we 5
6.
or 6? What
No, Gary Crane, triple premiership player for the Blues. Matt Clappe, as you mentioned.
Yep.
And Cade Simpson, the custodian of the jumper now.
It's a magnificent number, it has to be said, and it's a great milestone. It is an historic milestone, and blessed be number 6 by the Lord. So that explains the heavenly glow over my shoulder, Troy. Well, we have a lot to talk about. If you're new to this, it's basically where a couple of older males basically...
Speak for yourself, Tone.
Oh, well, thank you, but I've got the grey hair to prove it, Troy. You
have. That's why I wear this cap, mate.
I'd see you. Geez, you could be part of a youth crime gang with a hat like that. Come on, it's not isolation; it's home detention for you.
It's home detention for me. I just took off the ankle bracelet, Tone, and I'm ready to go.
nice work. Well, we are a couple of VFL AFL fans who like to take a misty-eyed look at the truly magnificent history of the game that we love, and the highs, the lows, the ins and outs, the good, the bad, and sometimes the ugly. We're going to be talking about 2 things today, both of which we touched on last week, and we're going to explore them in greater depth today. We're talking about AFL and VFL players who could run into a tree and not come off second best. We'll get to that a little later on. But right now, Troy, we're talking iconic AFL, VFL images.
We are, Tone. And what springs to mind for you, just straight off the bat?
As soon as I said that, I'd need to get the round, but it was a Friday night pouring with rain game that Carlton had just won. And it was the first win, I think, that Silvani the Younger had ever had, the 3rd generation Silvani to play for Carlton. I'm pretty sure it may have been against Essendon, which makes it so much the sweeter. But there was a great photo on the cover of The Age of him just beaming. Yeah. And he was drenched. He was like a drowned rat. He played a good game, but you talk about the elixir of victory, and he was nearly overdosing on it. And it was a real tonic, that photo. It was... I don't know if it's ever going to go down as an iconic image, but to a Carlton supporter and to fans who hadn't seen a lot of victory, to see somebody with that pedigree react like that to a victory, and the fact that it was night, the fact that it was pouring rain, it was a hard-fought contest, it was just a great image.
And as you said, Tone, it would have been one of the few great victories that the young Silvani had played in. Obviously, the Blues going through some tough times, and obviously the jubilation, he was overcome with the enormity of the win against obviously the Bombers, a massive foe. So a roller coaster of emotions for Jack Silvani.
You've reminded me of one, and this is going back, I would say, over 20 years ago, when St Kilda were couldn't get a victory. They were, I guess, we Carlton have been in the last couple of years. Caroline Wilson highlighted it, and it's always those bits of footage you don't see in the broadcast when you're watching at home. St Kilda had gone down by, I think, less than a goal, and I really wish I could remember the player. He was a marquee player at the time. He was certainly in their best 18, and it wasn't Milne, I know that. But as they came off the field, Caro pointed out to the fact that this bloke was crying.
It might have been Max Hudson.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it was, nobody would be critical of him for doing it. They had left nothing on the paddock, and the win would have been hugely important to them. And I just remember Caro's very tasteful treatment of that footage, and it's really stuck in my mind. Any idea what year that might have been, Troy?
Oh, well, Max Hudson, obviously, early 2000s. Played fullback. Was a tremendous defender. Wore the number 8 Guernsey for the Saints, and obviously after such a huge game, the emotions can spill over. So those iconic photos, and it's funny that you bring the Saints up, Tone. One of the most iconic photos, and this is seared into the memory of most VFL, AFL fans, was the St Kilda superstar Nicky Winmar lifting his jumper in response to the racial abuse that he received at Victoria Park. I think it was 1993, and that particular photo was taken by Wayne Ludby, and one of the most iconic photos ever taken. And that absolutely communicated a message, not to the footballing community, but to Australia as a whole. And I thought that is seared into the memory of anyone who saw that photo.
It still gave me chills years after seeing it, but I remember reading about it, saying it may, at the time, I think he was he pointing to his stomach saying, like, I've got the guts to be out here and you don't, or...
it was to say that he was proudly Indigenous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it may. Yeah. Has he spoken? I imagine he has spoken much about that incident.
He's been interviewed many times, and it's been documented. And he was playing a slashing game that day at Victoria Park, along with another wonderfully talented Indigenous player, Gilbert McAdam.
Yes.
And they were absolutely cutting up the pies, and obviously they received some pretty shoddy treatment from the Victoria Park faithful. And
you say they were Collingwood fans, Troy. That won't hurt everyone.
Victoria Park faithful.
Yes.
They know who they are.
But I know that's been memorialised in a statue.
It has been.
That gesture.
It has been, and it's funny you say that, Tone, because a lot of statues have been memorialised through iconic photographs.
It's a great point.
And another one of those iconic photographs, another legend, and this bronze statue is proudly presented right at the front of Whitten Oval. And who else could I be talking about? The guy who held the record, the games record for so many years until Dougie Hawkins took it over, 321 games, 5 best and fairest, the great E.J. Whitten.
Now, so that is which photo? Which photo did they memorialise in the statue?
The photo's the iconic kicking stride of EJ, where he's in full flight, kicking the ball, and that's in the statue was taken from that particular photo.
Well, you reminded me of the fact that the Footy Show's logo was Jack Dyer from memory.
Spot on.
And so there was him, dashing with the ball in hand, breaking lines, moving the ball forward. But isn't there that other photo where he's just delivered a whack to some unfortunate player? That is an incredible and iconic photo.
You're absolutely on the money there. Where he's whacking St Kilda's Tom Meehan in that photo. And that photo was taken in 1949, that particular photo. And that's an iconic photo. Obviously, Captain Blood, he got the moniker from Errol Flynn, the movie, the Hollywood movie, Captain Blood. But 1944 is where they got the Footy Show logo from. And that was a preliminary final where Jack Dyer kicked 9 goals.
Wow.
So he had a day out that day, Big Jack. And that, I think from memory reading, that was at the Junction Oval, that particular shot. So another iconic football ground. Obviously, when we were growing up, the Saints played there, and then Fitzroy took it over. But those 2 images of Jack Dyer, absolutely iconic. You're on the money there, Tone.
Former copper.
Yes.
Which would explain why the crime rate in Richmond when he was on the beat was remarkably low.
That's right. And, Jack. He also had a milk bar, I believe.
Yes, that's true.
Just across the road from the Punt Road Oval. Yeah. So I would imagine there would have been no 5-finger discounts at Jack Dyer's milk bar.
That's true. Very good point. Very good point. Now, when you said memorialised in statues, obviously you walk around the MCG and there's a few there, a few statues that is. I'm wondering if Jez's mark in 1970 has been cast in stone or bronze.
Yeah, what an iconic image that was. The iconic commentary of Mike Williamson, Jezzalenko, you beauty. Jerker Jenkin was the step ladder for Jezza.
Yep.
And a great trivia question is, who kicked the ball to Jezza? Now, this guy was a legend at Carlton. Wore the number 43, Guernsey.
Hang on. It wasn't one
Swan
Teddy
Mackay.
Hopkins who was on fire that day.
No, he changed the
Robert
course of the game.
Walls.
No. Swan Mackay. David Mackay.
Jeez.
A great custodian of the number 43 Guernsey until one of the great man Cooter took it over. So there you go, Tone. There's one for the memory bank. Swan Mackay delivered Jezza the mark of the century, as it was known.
I was sent one the other day by a mate of mine who works on a footy show. I'm not going to name this person. But,
wow, he must be a heavy hitter if you're not going to name him.
Well, I don't want to get him into any trouble.
Okay.
but this photo had been retrieved from the archives, and I had never seen it. And I sent it to you, Troy, so I know that you've seen it. It was Malcolm Blight giving a press conference.
Oh, yes. I do remember. And my initial thoughts were, Tone, I didn't get onto it until I had another look at it. I thought that was from the legendary, pathetic Pittman press conference.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Where he delivered a scathing attack on the performance of Adelaide ruckman David Pittman. But as I had a look in the background, I'm thinking, why has Tony sent this to me? And please explain in the words of one Pauline Hanson.
TV cameramen, and they're almost always cameramen, you've got to be very careful about where you set up when you're in football clubs' change rooms, because footballers, as we know, after a game, they like to have a shower and they're feeling very comfortable in that environment.
They are, yeah.
So you've got, maybe it was planned, but you've got Malcolm Blight probably explaining his disappointment with the tackle count when that statistic is added to by a bare naked player in the background. I think with his towel over his face, so we may never know the identity of the Phantom Flasher, but there it was in the background.
The Phantom Flasher.
Yes.
Oh, but it brings back memories of Peter the Phantom Puller from Blankety Blank. So
yes. So and it's just a still frame, and there he is with nothing to hide, quite literally, as Blighty, surrounded by microphones, or at least given what's in the background, I hope they're microphones, and he's just oblivious to it all.
Oblivious, and it gives a new meaning, Tone, to footy flashbacks.
Thank you. It certainly does. Thank you. Thank you.
But as I said to you, mate, I had to look at it twice to understand, well, why is Tony sending me this? And, gee whiz, I had a bit of a chuckle, mate, when I got onto that extra tackle count, let me tell you.
Thank you. Well, I just hope I'm not pinged for sending an obscene image via carriage service, but I'd never seen that one before, and I would certainly love to know Blighty's thoughts on it, because we know he's not shy, really. Not shy, the great Malcolm Blight.
No, he's got a bit of the nutty professor about him, Blighty, but he's always very entertaining to listen to, and I imagine being coached by him would have been like I suppose one of the scenes out of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, as Blighty as Randall P. McMurphy, played by Jack Nicholson.
That's probably the best coaching analogy I've ever heard, Troy Zantuck. You're amazing.
I've got a sad one for you, Tone.
Yep.
And this has stayed with me until now. I was, a kid growing up in the 70s. The photo was tagged Crimo's Cup, and that was the Peter Crimmins photo.
Yeah.
Taken in 1976 with his teammates surrounding him. From memory, I reckon it was Peter Knights, Bomber Hendry, Bernie Jones, Brian Douge, Big Al Martello,
Yep.
and Barry Rawlings. They all went around to Crimo's house after they'd knocked over the Roos in the 1976 grand final. And it's a sad photo, but for the Crimmins family, a photo that they'll cherish forever. Peter Crimmins died 2 days after that photo was taken. So as far as Hawthorn and just the VFL, AFL community goes, it's just such a sad photo, but a poignant photo at the same time.
Yeah, there are a few of them around for sure, and that's what we're talking about now at the moment. You reminded me, and I'm a bit of a stuck record with Carlton, so I apologise for that. But after '87, Braddles and Stephen Kernahan brought the Premiership Cup back to Peter Motley. They flew it back to Adelaide to give him a close-up look at it, and of course that's I guess another tragedy in the annals of the VFL.
Absolutely, Tone. What a player Peter Motley was.
Oh boy, oh boy. I'm often and let's go back to St Kilda. And again, this is not to have fun at their expense, but I'd like to have fun at their expense now.
That's part of being a St Kilda supporter.
Exactly.
That's just in the DNA, Tone. Go ahead.
Well, what baffles me about the one and only surviving picture from 1966?
Oh, I love this. Yeah.
Now, what were cameras confiscated at the ground? Was it played in Soviet Russia? Did nobody else have a boxed brownie that they were able to take a snap of Darryl Baldock wearing his own jumper?
Isn't it fantastic? And I say that to all my St Kilda friends. That moment, you got your hands on the cup, Tone. I'll throw it over to you. The Doc, one of the greatest players ever to play the game, and one of Saints royalty, was in a
Collingwood jumper. I don't know, Matt. It's a black and white photo. There's not a dash of red in it.
It just rubs it into the Saints, doesn't it? It just their only premiership, and
surely St Kilda, with all the the resource, Lindsay Fox and all the high rollers that have come through there, have been able to pay some intrepid sleuth to track down a photo of 1966 with somebody in that very proud Guernsey. Love the club crest there. I've always liked that. Somebody with their mitts on the cup.
It's a great jumper too, Tone. The St Kilda jumper. It's a fantastic jumper. So, another one with the Saints, just sort of getting off track a bit. But I always ask my Saints friends to actually, in chronological order, reel off their premiership. And that doesn't go down too well, let me tell you. But it's always good for a laugh, mate. Just on haute couture, as far as great photos go, I'll take you back to 1977. One Graham Teasdale from South Melbourne won the Brownlow. And it's an amazing set of circumstances. What went through his mind when he was getting dressed to go to the Brownlow medal? He was in a brown velvet suit with a brown tie, looking like Austin Powers, the spy that shagged me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a great photo. It's I think Tease has copped absolute bucket loads of shite ever since for his dress sense. Brownlow medalist, a terrific player, and what a great year he had that year with South Melbourne. Went to the Magpies subsequently after playing with South Melbourne, but he'll always be remembered. Not for so much for having a great season, but that god awful brown velvet suit that he wore.
I'd like to think that's in the Sporting Hall of Fame at the MCG, where it's being lovingly curated.
I'd like to see it immortalised in bronze outside the MCG with Teaser in a brown velvet suit.
It can be the official spot where fashion went to die. You could say that.
Fashion went to die.
I know that the red light, the red light, or the red carpet part of the Brownlows is very popular, mainly to see what the women are wearing. And I think Teesdale killed any hope that anybody would ever tune in to see what the men were wearing.
No, that as you say, mate, that's obviously quoting Don McLean. That's the day the music died.
Right. Now,
who else have you got for me, mate? Have you got any other great photos that you can remember?
Yeah, before we move on to that, I did have a point, but then I've forgotten that point that I did have. So,
I am sorry, mate.
Actually, no. It was a topic for next week. That's what I had.
Okay.
That I'm going to float now. Players who move clubs.
We're getting really good at that, aren't we?
Well, we just thrash this out on air, but I like to seed it in people's minds, Troy. Players who swapped clubs to achieve premiership glory that they never got.
What a great topic. Love it. Next week's topic, Tone.
Let's do that for next week. But of course, this topic, and you gave us some remarkable insight into this, was sparked by, you'd have to say it's top 3 iconic photos of John Northey.
Yeah.
And a crestfallen Jim Steins. I don't know if that's the best way to describe what was going through Jim Steins' mind. But the one I did want to bring up, and Tony Wilson, who is an absolutely brilliant writer, he's written a book about that, and I'm going to be speaking to him on my 3AW radio show about that.
He's fantastic, Tony. He's great. He's just an encyclopedia, Tony. He's terrific.
Magnificent with the spoken word, with the written word, I should say. The photo of Dermy in the hands of the trainers in 1989, that photo, pure pain on his face. And then of course, anybody familiar with the story knows what happens after that.
That is a great nomination, and that is etched in my mind as well. And the courage that it took for him, firstly, to get up, secondly, to play, thirdly, to see out the game and win a premiership. After that, slobber knocker of a bump from Mark Yates when he didn't see it coming. It's one of the great moments. That 1989 grand final, that's the best grand final that I've ever seen by a long way, Tone. It had everything, and that particular moment, you've summed it up beautifully. What a great show of courage by Brereton to get up from that and impact the game.
Well, that's a great point. You're right. He did impact it. He didn't just see it out. He played a crucial role. The other thing about that photo too, Troy, next time you look at it, look at the concern in the face of the trainers.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. They're wanting to get him off immediately.
I think they're thinking hospital is what they're thinking.
Well, they're thinking, they are thinking hospital. You could see that was what was going through their mind with one of those thought bubbles.
Yeah.
We'd better get Dermy down into an ambulance and off to hospital.
And I don't know if you saw the article on Dermy's spine the other day when there was an X-ray of it, and it's a spine that just goes like that. He's paid for that courage in football. He's paid for the Mark Yates incidences and so many others. I mean, he was both supplying and receiving when it came to physical hits, let's be honest.
A great analogy. He was a supplier and a receiver.
Yeah.
He certainly was. He dished out a few beauties in his time. Oh, Dermot, just ask Vander at VFL Park. Paul Vanderhaar.
The Flying Dutchman, the great Paul Vanderhaar, magnificent.
Flying Dutchman, yeah.
So now we can almost segue then from there onto players who can run into trees, leaving the tree the second best out of the altercation. Unless, of course, Troy, there was a couple of other photos you might want to tick off before we get into that.
Maybe just 2 or 3, Tone, and I'll go through them really quickly. One of the greatest players ever to play the game for the Bombers, kicked 12 goals on debut, recruited from Hastings, the great John Coleman.
Yep.
It's a great photo against North Melbourne. I reckon it was at Arden Street because I can see the gasometer in the background.
Oh, lovely.
And it's the iconic photo of John Coleman, the number 10. We'll love to see him play. We would have loved it, Tone, but unfortunately, we didn't get to. the other iconic photo was a guy called Merv Hobbs, and he played for the Bulldogs, and he took this mark over Melbourne's Trevor Johnson in the 1961 preliminary final. One of the most iconic marks, just a great version of both hands up in the air, and the photography is first class.
Textbook.
Number 2 he wore, Merv Hobbs. And the other one that I've got for you is Michael Roach, who we spoke about last week. That mark that he took when he was 75 feet in the air over Kelvin Moore and Terry Moore at the MCG, with Kevin Bartlett running past for the handball when Roachy was 5 stories high.
Yeah.
One of the great marks, one of the greatest marks of all time. So I just thought I'd pop those in.
Well, when he came down, he was treated for hypoxia.
That's
how high he was.
He thought he was Edmund Hilary.
Exactly. He had a little Tenzing Norgay behind him. Get there, master.
For all our mountaineers out there.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Any fans of the legendary Nepalese Sherpa?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I think Sherpa Tenzing was Nepalese.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk players then who would run into the tree.
Yes, yeah.
They're fine, the tree not so much. I think we've mentioned one. It has to be Dermot Brereton. Now, sorry, Troy, this is in honour of, again, following up on something, when Tony Shaw, and I told you about how I always loved seeing Tony Shaw give a press conference in glasses because it meant that the scholar was in. And then you mentioned his eyesight was so bad he was out for a run one day and he ran into a tree. And that would have knocked him about a bit. There's no doubt about that. But very, very, very tough character was or is.
Oh, yeah. One of the toughest of all time. Yeah.
So it did lead us to speculate if we were to name, I don't know, let's say a dozen players of yore who would have no trouble messing with the timber.
Well, one springs to mind for me. He's actually a mate of mine. I've known this guy for, I reckon, 30 years.
Yep.
Played for Fitzroy in the 70s and 80s. Put the Bombers out of a final series once when he kicked the winning goal at VFL Park against the Bombers. He was built like a brick yibbity-yibbiter.
Yep.
He had muscles on his muscles. Mickey Conlon.
Oh, yes. Nice work. Nice work on that. And look, kicking Essendon out of a grand final or any sort of final, that is God's work.
Yeah, it is God's work. I knew you'd enjoy that. It was an elimination final, a rainy elimination final at VFL Park, and Mickey just slotted it through. He hadn't had a touch all day. That was the beauty of it. And he's just slotted it through, just cool as a cucumber, and the Bombers were out.
This is going to annoy our Essendon fans, Troy, but
come on. I've given them a massive rap with the 5-6 episodes we've done.
Oh, that's true.
That's got to get a bit of payback, Tone.
Well, there's almost a whole episode in elimination finals. Essendon has lost by a kick.
Ooh, what about preliminary finals that Essendon have lost by
preliminary?
a kick?
Oh, yeah, or you do that. Now, I'm not thinking of the obvious one in 99. I'm thinking 96.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I like the way you think, Tone. You've got a really a malevolent mind when it comes to either Essendon, Richmond or Collingwood. You're not so bad with the Sainers and the D's and the Roy boys.
You got to know your enemies.
You got to know your enemies. So who have you got in your kit bag of tree fellas?
All right. Number one tree fella that came to mind when we touched them the other day, I thought there was 2 or 3 I didn't mention. Number one for Carlton, because it's always Carlton, it's got to be Fraser Brown.
Oh, yes. Yes, that's a good call. Fraser was as tough as teak, wasn't he?
Yep.
Took no prisoners. Ask Dean Wallace.
Well, exactly. Not only that, but if you'd watched Fraser Brown play, you knew he was no shrinking violet. He was physically courageous.
He was.
I think he had the nickname. Well, he had the nickname Doggy because he was very dogged. And I think there's a lot to be said. I know opposition players hate players like that, but my God, when they're on your team, they're just the greatest. And they are, let's celebrate the hard nuts because they're a wonderful part of our game.
Absolutely. And obviously in footy circles, Tone, it's called having mongrel.
Yep.
And Fraser Brown, as you said, he made his teammates stand that extra foot taller around him. And opposition fans absolutely hate guys like that. But when you've got him as one of your own, he's, it's like having gold.
Well, it's like President Lyndon Johnson once said about I think it was the leader of South Vietnam. Somebody was complaining about his tactics, and he said, he may be a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch.
He's our son of a bitch, LBJ. All the way with LBJ.
There we go. The other one, and again, there's a Carlton connection here, but Stan Magro versus an oak tree.
Yeah, well, that oak tree was Alex Jezelenko one day, wasn't it? At Victoria Park on the outer wing. That was a sickening collision, that one.
Well, if you want to call it a collision, I'd call it a targeted assassination attempt on a man sent by a kind and loving God to move amongst us as a Messiah. But it's all about being objective about it.
Tell us what you really feel, Tony.
Magro, I'm sure. I mean, look, he had a name that rhymed with aggro, so maybe it was preordained. Is he known for cleaning up anyone else?
Oh, look, he was a very close checking backman. He wouldn't give you an inch. So, but that Jezelenko collision that day, I reckon I've seen that 100 times on the sensational 70s and obviously Carlton Collingwood games. It always gets featured, and I remember he played on Kevin Bartlett in the 1980 grand final for most of the game. Obviously, KB won the Norm Smith medal, slotting through 7. So he didn't get too close to KB that day, Stanley.
Well, just some rare form from the great man, Kevin Bartlett there, you'd have to say. So can you nominate another one then, Troy? Player versus tree?
I can, from Collingwood.
Sayonara tree.
The Incredible Hulk.
Oh, yeah, okay, good call. Good call.
Rene Kink. He, and we've spoken about Rene before. He had the build of a Greek Adonis when he was playing with Collingwood. And I think he'd give the tree a fair run for its money.
Okay, well then, look, if you're speaking Adonises, then Anthony Koutafidis versus tree.
Yeah, Kuta was more an athletic, lean Adonis, wasn't he? He was the prototype, wasn't he? Anthony Koutafidis for a VFL footballer, AFL footballer, just an amazing physique.
Well, see, they used to talk about that all the time, and I remember thinking, well, that's all well and good, but the first thing, if you were to program a footballer, if you were to build one from the ground up, you make them resistant to any kind of knee injury. And of course, we know that Kuta's greatness was cruelled by injury, and but it's an enduring source of pride for every Carlton fan that he won Dancing with the Stars. We'll always have that trophy along with the 16 Premiership Cups, Troy.
That's fantastic, Tone. That is great. Wasn't he tremendous on Dancing with the Stars? The only season that I actually watched it just to see how Kuta went, and he got the chocolates. What a tremendous! And you hang your hat on that.
I certainly will. I tell you, it's been so grim. You start crowing about losing a preseason night final.
Yes. Well, you guys won a few, didn't you?
A Wizard Cup. Thank you very much.
Cup, yeah.
And we beat West Coast, who went on to win the grand final that year.
And where did you finish that year?
The regular season? Matter.
Well, I think it might have been Wooden Spoon, yibbida. You've got plenty of those in the pantry now.
We've got too many of them.
But it was all forgotten, Tone. All forgotten, mate, with Kuta winning Dancing with the Stars.
Oh, thank you. So, look, that was some salve on the wounds, as they say. So you'll take it where you get it.
That's fantastic. Just another quick nomination, Stuart Dew.
Oh, Stewie Dew, yes.
Mm. Yeah, Stu's put a bit of poundage on lately, and I think if he ran into a tree, I think the tree had come off second best with Stewie doing his best with the Gold Coast Suns up there, coaching them. So he was a tremendous player for Port Adelaide, and when he went over to Hawthorn, played in that premiership in 08, he was the difference.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to say well played. And he was one of those players, and another future episode, opposition players you love to watch. He was definitely one because he was lethal on song. And I remember being in Adelaide for that Port Grand Final when they won. Hang on, now that was 2004. I'm thinking of a different premiership. 2008 was the Hawthorn one, obviously. But it was greeted with a universal kind of sigh in Adelaide. It kind of struck me as odd, but then you realise where Port are coming from. They are a backs against the wall kind of football club. You can see what really motivates them. Working class origins, never the favourites.
No.
But yeah, Stewie Dew, you've reminded me of a player who I think would respectfully run into the tree. He would understand that the tree had a job to do, and yet so did he. And
Yes.
that there could only be one winner from the outcome.
And who was that, Tone?
Don Scott.
Scotty, what a great nomination from the 70s.
Yeah.
Oh, a great captain of the Hawthorn Football Club, a tremendous ruckman in his own right. And Scotty, we talked about Haute Couture at the start of the show. Boy,
that's
trailblazer.
And how can we not mention, Haute Couture at the Brownlow and not mention, well, was it a handbag or a man bag? I mean, will that be the discussion that continues long after his passing?
Well, it depends. If you're in Scotty's company, it's a man bag. If you're on more than the score, well, I'll leave it up to you, Tone.
Right. Okay. All right. I don't want to be that tree, so I'll say it's whatever Don Scott says it was.
I love your diplomacy.
There we go. Well, that's all we have time for. Great work as always, Troy. You just hit the books and then rely on what vast trove of information is already stored in the, as Max Walker called it, the neck-top computer.
Tangles. Oh, I love Tangles, Tone. What a great played for Melbourne.
Yes, he did.
Played league football for the Demons, and obviously a wonderful Test cricketer. Sadly, the late great Max Walker.
Now, am I right in thinking he was a trained architect as well?
Gee, I tell you what, you're spot on.
How about him talking to Harry Madden, trying to get planning approval for one of his designs? That would have been a very interesting mythical conversation. Anyway, Troy, great work as always. We will be back next week with More Than the Score. Troy Zantuck and Tony Moclair here at Isolation TV. If you'd like to drop us a line, just go to Isolation TV. We'd love to hear from you. And we will be back dissecting the great, rich and storied history of AFL VFL next week.